Hello, I'm Sandrea Brooks from UBS Wealth Management USA's Multicultural Investors segment. Welcome to Founders and Funders, our conversation series with women entrepreneurs focusing on how they built, exited, and supported successful businesses. To catch all the episodes and keep up to date on new interviews in the series, please subscribe to the Founders and Funders playlist on UBS's YouTube channel. Leading this month's Founders and Funders conversation is Bianca Benedetti-Fang, the manager of UBS's Business Owners segment, providing resources for entrepreneurs as they build, grow, and monetize their companies. I'm excited to have her lead the conversation with Lakshmi Shenoy, the CEO of Embarc Collective, Florida's fastest growing startup hub. Bianca, take it away.
Thanks, Andrea. Today on Founders and Funders, I am so excited to introduce our special guest, Lakshmi Shenoy, who leads the charge at Embarc Collective in Tampa. Prior to helping entrepreneurs through Embarc, Lakshmi served as the VP of Strategy and Business Development at 1871, the #1 university-affiliated business incubator in the world. She was recognized as the 2022 Tampa Bay Business Journal Businesswoman of the Year and 2022 Indo-US Chamber Businesswoman of the Year. Lakshmi, you have amazing experience in working with entrepreneurs. I'm happy to welcome you to Founders and Funders and really looking forward to our discussion and some of your advice for our viewers today.
Thanks for having me, Bianca.
So I would love to discuss your work leading Embarc Collective specifically. What led you to this career path, focusing on starting an organization that really is helping entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I'm similar to a lot of different entrepreneurs in that I've always been a builder. Maybe not every entrepreneur thinks about building for fellow builders, but that's the path that I found myself in. I spent a lot of time with different corporations at the beginning of my career, and I found that I was craving this ability to build something from scratch. I'm not that good at building along and improving existing processes. I love taking something where there's no rules and nothing established and just creating something from nothing. And so that's the opportunity that I had when I first went to 1871 in Chicago, which is this tremendous organization that serves entrepreneurs, over 400 different companies across the Midwest. And I had this incredible opportunity where I was recruited to Tampa Bay in Florida in 2018 to build something from scratch to support the entrepreneurs here. So that was the start of Embarc Collective in 2018. And I got to take a blank slate where they said, take the experience that you've had, the learnings that you've had along the way, and build something that will really help startups in Florida grow. It was an incredible opportunity, and I've been having a ton of fun ever since.
That's amazing. I feel like starting from scratch is exactly what the entrepreneurial spirit is built on. So that's really great. And you have had a lot of success and growth at the helm of this ship. I think when we think about the startup community, everyone is looking for that silver bullet. So what do you think makes Embarc Collective different from other founder-focused programs?
Absolutely. I had the benefit of hindsight where I got to spend several years working with startup support organizations, not only in Chicago, but across the world prior to moving down to Florida. And that really helped hone a very specific perspective that I come to the table with about what makes quality startup support. A couple of observations. So from my perspective, when building a support organization, your core product is support. And across the world, different support organizations are leveraging volunteers to help different entrepreneurs. Well, to me, that's the equivalent of working at a development shop if you're building websites or building applications and outsourcing the development and the building of the product to volunteers. As a business owner, you wouldn't necessarily do that. And so I took that same mindset and said, I don't want to have volunteers, as well-intentioned as they may be. Life gets in the way. Sometimes you have other competing priorities when you're a volunteer in an organization. So what I said was, how about if I created a model where we're actually compensating experts who I can vet and make sure that they have tremendous startup capabilities. I can make sure that their expertise is really complementary and fitting into the specific needs of the startups that we're supporting. And by compensating them, I can ensure that we have accountability and consistency. So that's the real differentiator behind Embarc Collective, is that as opposed to having volunteers support startups that we work with, we have a paid staff of coaches who represent the different function areas that are really important for early stage startups, whether it's development and building product, or fundraising, or brand strategy, talent strategy, marketing strategy, even wellness and burnout prevention. We have all of those function areas across our paid staff of coaches. And that has created this quality, accountable, and consistent program for the startups we work with. The other key differentiator for us as an organization is that we don't have a set or time-bound curriculum. Instead, when a startup comes to Embarc Collective, they outline for us their short and long-term milestones. And our coaching staff actually supports them in a really customized way against those milestones, as opposed to what traditionally happens around the world in different programs, is that there is a set curriculum that might be 12 or 14 weeks, and you get a ton of value, but if you're an experienced entrepreneur, if you're coming with 20 years of industry experience, if you're coming straight from school, it doesn't necessarily take into account the specific knowledge and gaps that you as an entrepreneur are coming to the table with. So taking a really customized approach, removing the program from the piece and really saying, what is if I'm Lakshmi building a startup, what is my individual path and my goals and my needs, and how does Embarc Collective serve them?
Well, of course, I love that flexibility. No business is one size fits all. And I think we also all know that success is a team sport. So having that group of SMEs is probably invaluable. I think when we think about your story too, look, none of us are able to achieve success without some help along the way. So I would love to know, as you've been going along this journey, who have been some key sponsors for you?
Absolutely. I'm a first-time CEO. I joke that I'm a starter CEO. And so I have had an incredible amount of help. The three groups of people that I rely on a daily basis, a board of directors. I've learned that your board should be an asset and a resource to you as an entrepreneur building an organization. And so I'm able to come to my board with strategic challenges, personnel challenges, competitive challenges, and really open up and say, here's my assessment of the situation, but can you help me identify the blind spots that I'm not thinking about? Because my board is made up of experienced business people that have incredible knowledge for me to leverage. So that is a huge group. And I would say to any founder, once you're ready to build a board, really making sure that they are creating that leverage for you in terms of thought partnership. That's such a key asset to get from your board of directors. I also have a peer group of 7 other women around the country who are also all running their own organizations and companies. And we meet every other week virtually. And these women are my lifeline. They are the women that I can come to with my most vulnerable challenges. Nothing is off the table when talking amongst each other. And we have helped each other through so many different challenges and opportunities within our respective organizations. I would say that if you don't have a peer group as a builder of a company, go find one, go create one. I created this because I needed it. And so it's been incredible for me. And then the last is my husband. When you're building a startup, is not something that is isolated to the 9 to 5. It is all encompassing. Building a company is it's a representation of you as a person, and it's really hard to disassociate you from your company, and it's hard to turn that part of your world off. And having a partner who understands it, who celebrates it, who can be a thought partner around it has been so critical for me to be able to have the success that I've experienced. It also helps that he's a startup founder. So we come to the table with an understanding of what we each are going through on a given day.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that he was a startup founder as well. So I'm sure that makes for some very interesting dinner conversations.
We talk about our businesses a lot.
But you're totally right. I think sometimes you need somebody who is going to play devil's advocate because you're in the thick of it. And to have that support has probably been amazing for you. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about how you've been paying it back to other female CEOs and female founders in just a minute. But I know one thing that everybody would love to know, because there is so much traction in the startup community right now. There's tons of interest. There's a lot of volume. So for you, as you're seeing so many startups coming through Embarc's door, are there any attributes that help you to really identify a high potential business or any traits specifically that you're looking for in entrepreneurs as a differentiator?
Absolutely. We've been really lucky at Embarc Collective. In 3 years, we've grown 5x, and now we serve over 120 technology and tech-enabled companies. So we have such an incredible vantage point. And over the course of my career, I've worked with thousands of different startups. So I have a very clear perspective on what good looks like and what great looks like within communities like Embarc Collective. For us, as we're evaluating startups, we're looking first at the viability of the business. We want to make sure that there's a sound business model. But secondly, we really want to look at the scalability of the business. The beauty of technology is that you can have a global solution on day one. And so we are equipped to serve the companies that have that mindset already in place when they come to Embarc Collective, that they want to be the number one in their category in the world. But the third piece of criteria is the one that is the most important and oftentimes the most challenging to assess. Embarc Collective is structured as a nonprofit, and we're paying coaches to help these companies. We're putting an incredible amount of investment into every startup that we support. And so ensuring that every company that we work with is incredibly coachable is not only good for the startups that we're working with, but it's also key for the team that I'm bringing to the table. I don't want to be paying people if a startup is not receptive to real and oftentimes critical feedback about their approach. And so ensuring that individuals who are part of Embarc Collective, the founders that are here, can be coachable, take feedback, be able to hear different perspectives, not always just listen blindly to them, but think critically about those perspectives. That is so, so critical to the success of an entrepreneur within their own trajectory of building the company. And I think oftentimes one of the women in my peer group, her name is Elena Valentine. She's the CEO of Skill Scout. She often reminds me that the things happening as you're building a company, they're not happening to you, they're happening for you. So within that coachability, I'm looking for people who see obstacles and challenges and curveballs as opportunities, not as things that are impediments to their ability to continue to move forward. Because if you operate with that, something's happening to me, I'm the victim in what I'm experiencing as a startup founder, you're not going to have the resilience or grit to get through building. It's building a company is one of the hardest things to do. It's not for the faint of heart. And so you really have to make sure that you have this mindset where you can take feedback and also see that critical feedback as opportunity to get better rather than pushback in terms of what your ideas may be.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. I think being open to seeing things as opportunities and having resilience is so important. And of course, you launched Embarc just prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, I'm sure that must have been hard. And I will say we've heard so many stories over the last few months from entrepreneurs who really had to triumph through challenge. But moving forward, what are you really advising your entrepreneurs to focus on as we are embarking into this new chapter? Couldn't help myself.
Of course. It's funny what a whirlwind the last few years have been. And just to give you the timeline, Embarc Collective is a 32,000 square foot state-of-the-art startup hub in downtown Tampa that we opened on January 6th of 2020. And so, we went from the highs of highs to the, oh my God, what's happening in the world moment, just as the whole world was going through this. And honestly, that was one thing that gave me a lot of comfort as I was navigating, leading an organization through the COVID pandemic, was that this was something that the entire world was dealing with. And we were all navigating, we're all in an unknown place, navigating these very stormy waters. And so I felt a weird sense of camaraderie with the world, particularly other business leaders, as we were trying to react and adapt based on the limited information that we were getting each day. And so it didn't make it easier, but I would say that it actually gave me a lot of solace to know that I wasn't experiencing this alone. But if there is any benefit of going through a global pandemic, from my perspective, it's that we very quickly were able to identify huge problems in the world, whether they were health system problems, economic problems, social justice problems, but they were all in our face as we were collectively navigating the pandemic. And so as an entrepreneur or any group of entrepreneurs, your goal is to solve the world's biggest problems. And there was a light being shined on major problems that needed to be solved so quickly. And so it was almost a source of inspiration for how do we make each of our respective businesses matter and solve problems that we all need to be solved urgently. And so I've tried to take that mindset as we are hopefully coming out of this pandemic and, really thinking through which problems matter and how do we ensure that we are, as entrepreneurs, are tackling the problems that can help our communities, help the world in the most significant ways.
Thank you for that, of course. And I would like to kind of wrap up with our last question. It's something that we actually like to ask all of our guests. But we'd love to know, in your work with Embarc and advising so many entrepreneurs, what is your top advice for those watching, particularly those female founders of early stage companies? And for some of our viewers who may not have their own companies, but want to support female founders, how can they be intentional in really supporting the next generation of female entrepreneurs?
So I'll answer your question in two pieces. So in terms of guidance for entrepreneurs, and this is probably because I'm a daughter of a scientist, I try to advise everybody to think in experiments. If you're building a startup and you've said, I feel like this is a big problem, it's got a big market opportunity, there's a gap and I'm the one that can solve for it. A lot of those assertions are assumptions that have to be validated. And so in those early days of building a startup, I try to think about everything as a test and a way to validate an assumption rather than assuming that what I dreamt up, in the morning was true. I want to go out and prove that it is in fact true. And I can do that through customer insights, through data, through other research mechanisms, by putting my product in the hands of customers, whatever it might be. But thinking in short experiments and being okay when you're proven wrong. That's not a bad thing. That just means that you're refining the insights to fuel your company. And so, just that mindset where your idea does not have to look the exact same on day 1 versus day 500. And in fact, the best ideas are evolving as you are incorporating more insights. That is something that I preach wholeheartedly to the companies that I get to work with. It's especially as you're going out for customer feedback, it's oftentimes easy for founders to get what I would call happy ears. So if you're listening to a startup founder pitch their idea, you don't want to tell them their idea is terrible. They're coming to you with such vulnerability and passion. You're going to say something of like, that sounds really interesting. I'm really excited about what you're building. And an untrained founder might hear, they love my idea, they're going to buy it, they're going to invest. And so I really try to help founders learn how to ask the right questions to get true insights out of the people that they're seeking feedback from, because that's going to save them so much time and money as they continue to evolve what they're working on. In terms of for your second question around supporting the next generation of women founders, and I would add into that women investors, women customers, everybody that's required to really help a startup flourish. It's about making sure that you as a founder are thinking about the different populations that you can impact. And so I would say that talent is a huge one. And so I really try to make a point to ensure that, as you're building a pool of candidates, whether it's a full-time hire on your team or a contractor or an intern, making sure that you're filling your application pool with women and asking people, I want to make sure that I'm considering the top women for this role. Can you make recommendations so that you're giving an opportunity for women to grow within your organization? Oftentimes, especially when you're a startup founder and you're just so stretched doing all of the different roles, it's easy to just take whatever applications come to you. I think corporations do a much more intentional job around getting a diverse set of candidates. Startups need to follow in that mindset as well. I'd say the same for customer stakeholders and investors, making sure that you're seeking out diverse populations of investors to consider and have conversations with, not just taking whatever money is available to you, but ensuring that the stakeholders that you're surrounding yourself with are demonstrating the world that you want to see. It's easier said than done, and it takes a lot of work to be able to do that. But if we're going to be part of the solution, we have to invest the time and effort to make that happen.
So we actually asked that to just about all of the people that join us. And interestingly, I will say it has come up before that being open to feedback, and especially that from insights from your customers, is so important. And then we also have gotten a lot of focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and of course being very intentional about having stakeholders that believe in your mission. So thank you so much for reinforcing a lot of that for us and for our viewers. Lakshmi, I really appreciate you joining us today on Founders and Funders. I'm going to turn it back over to Sandrea to close us out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca and Lakshmi, for joining us today for our latest episode of Founders and Funders. To our viewers, don't forget to check out the Founders and Funders playlist and stay tuned for future conversations. You can save the Founders and Funders playlist to get updates automatically right here on UBS's YouTube channel. I encourage you to speak with your UBS financial advisor, and you can also find more UBS resources on financial planning and wealth building, as well as the latest research to support women and business owner by visiting ubs.com/women and ubs.com/business services. We also recently launched new research on multicultural investors, their wealth journeys, how they've built and managed their wealth, and what they want their wealth to help them achieve in future generations. We also want to hear about your wealth journey, so read the report and share your journey at ubs.com/invest to advance. To learn more about the multicultural investor segment, visit ubs.com/multicultural-investors. Thank you again for placing your trust with UBS and your financial advisor teams. Thanks again for joining us. Be safe and be well.